Well, here's one of them right here. This one is from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
Oh, God damn it.
Sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com.
You were right, Jake.
Please,
I think Jake from State Farm.
What are you wearing, Jake?
What are you wearing? We both went to that.
If there is a Jake from
I remember we'd go to Atlanta TV on Saturday mornings, right at the Techwood Drive Studios, and that's when the employees were not. Saturday was a skeleton crew for their regular business staff, and so they had the guys dressing in like a combination of locker room and storage area type of thing in the back, but some of the guys would branch out into the cubicles where the Monday through Friday, the normal office people were working, and you could use the fucking phones and dial out long distance. And I swear to God, if I couldn't find Robert Gibson, I knew exactly where he was. He was in a fucking cubicle having phone sex with one of his fucking friends and acquaintances from around the country on TBS's dime. Go ahead.
Well, this question from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. In a recent interview, Brodie Lee said Vince McMahon pitched repackaging him and Erick Rowan as a new version of Demolition. Vince has done this before with the new Blackjacks and, of course, the new Midnight Express. What are your thoughts on Vince trying to recreate tag teams from the past with new talent? And actually, on that topic, I'll ask you about some of this other stuff, because another listener, this one being, I'm trying to get a name here, this is another email, Chris Sigia, sent a breakdown of the Brodie Lee interview, and apparently Brodie Lee said Vince showed Lee and Erick Rowan a picture of Demolition and said, try to look and wrestle like these guys. And the people in charge of costumes made up some gear for them, and they were going to carry mallets, but they couldn't call the mallets sledgehammers because Triple H had a sledgehammer.
Oh, good God.
But he wanted them, like literally they were shown a picture of Demolition and said to look like them.
Well, with mallets, what were they supposed to call the mallet? Mallets? I'll hit you with my mallet. I don't know what Vince. I don't know where the new Demolition came from with Brodie Lee. Although the gear hopefully he saved it, because it couldn't look any worse than the gear he was wearing the other night with all the fucking fake zippers and everything on the bell bottoms or whatever the fuck that was. But he loves to, the hillbillies. Think every decade he's had hillbillies, because he grew up watching the Scufflin' Hillbillies, Chuck and Rip from Ashland, Kentucky, and it was a big deal in Madison Square Garden in the 50s because people in New York had never seen real hillbillies. And then the Beverly Hillbillies became the #1 television show in the fucking country, and the Scufflin' Hillbillies, had a pretty good run. But then in the fucking in the 80s, he had Hillbilly Jim and Uncle Elmer and Cousin Junior and Cousin Luke. In the 90s, it was the Godwins. In the 2000s, didn't they they made poor old Luke Gallows a fucking brain-damaged hillbilly of some description, didn't they? Festus or something like that?
With Terry Gordy's son.
Yeah. Vince loves phony hillbillies. I mean, a real hillbilly could actually get over, but phony hillbillies, I don't know what his thing is, but he always wants flavors of teams. Now, I know the new Midnight Express could have been Vince McMahon's idea, or it could have been Shitstain trying to fuck with me, because I was at home when I got the call, and I know that it was from Vince McMahon, but I know that Shitstain was somewhere around. And I think the way that probably came up was every time that me and Bruce and JR and Vince would ride together somewhere through 96, part of 97, before we all got out of risking our lives riding with Vince, every time we went to a convenience store, hotel, desk clerk, whatever, they would point at me and say, Jim Cornette, Midnight Express. This was while I was managing the WWF champion Yokozuna, but they were still talking about the Midnight Express. And every time somebody would, especially when we went down south or in the Midwest or down in Texas, whatever, and Vince would always look with that look that he gets on his face like, what the fuck? Why don't they know you for managing Yoko, pal? Because the midnight was more over and more people were watching us. So I don't know whether he said something and Shitstain found the opportunity to try to do another thing to make me look bad, or whether they were trying to find something to do with Bob Holly and Bart Gunn, and some way or another, my name came up as a manager, and then Russo, could have figured, oh, let's make them the new Midnight Express. Anything to make anybody from the NWA or anybody from the 80s Crockett, group or whatever look goofy or bad. But that's how that came up. The New Rockers, because they had Marty. Sean was already taken in another fucking angle, but they had Marty, so they put poor Al Snow in as Leaf Cassidy. They said, the Rockers, the whole Leaf Cassidy thing was Leaf Garrett and Sean Cassidy. The whole idea was they come up with teeny bopper rocker names, right? And so I can believe he wanted to do Demolition again, because the reason he did Demolition was because he couldn't get the Road Warriors. And that's why when he actually finally got the Road Warriors, the edge was taken off of them, because they'd seen the duplicate team in the WWF before they ever saw the original. So the Road Warriors never were dominant there because they'd already pushed Demolition to the moon. I don't know what he fucking thinks, but I'm looking at Brodie Lee now going, God, he needs something. Put a guy that looks like a fucking caveman in a suit and have him eating at Morton's Steakhouse and impersonating Vince McMahon, and then wearing bell bottoms with fake zippers. I don't, and he's the leader of the biggest fucking crew of jobbers since Mike Jackson used to bring a carload over to Atlanta on Saturday mornings for $40 a piece.